The legend usually starts the same way. Someone picks up a battered, rusted rifle that looks like it hasn't been cleaned in years, pulls the charging handle, and it still fires. From deserts to jungles, from frozen trenches to dusty city streets, the AK-47 has built a reputation that sounds almost supernatural. A gun that never jams, a weapon that laughs at mud, sand, and neglect. But step closer to the truth, and the story becomes more interesting than the myth, because the AK doesn't work by magic. It works by design, compromise, and a very specific idea of what reliability really means. When Mikhail Kalashnikov designed the rifle in the late 1940s, his goal wasn't precision or elegance, it was survival. The Soviet Union needed a weapon for millions of conscripts, many of whom would receive minimal training and operate in brutal conditions. The rifle had to function after being dropped, kicked, frozen, or forgotten in the back of a truck. To make that happen, engineers intentionally left extra space inside the mechanism, loose tolerances, wide clearances between moving parts. That space gave dirt, sand, and carbon somewhere to go instead of locking the gun solid, where a tightly fitted rifle might choke when grime builds up. The AK keeps cycling because nothing inside is rubbing too perfectly against anything else. That famous long-stroke gas piston is part of the secret. When a round is fired, high-pressure gas drives a heavy piston and bolt carrier all the way back with serious force. It's not gentle, it's not subtle, it's brute mechanical momentum. That mass slams through fouling and debris that might slow down lighter, more delicate systems. Even if friction increases, the AK has power to spare. It simply muscles its way through the problem. Add a big extractor claw that grips the cartridge hard and a tapered cartridge case that slides free more easily, and you get a rifle that is extremely forgiving when conditions get ugly. But forgiving is not the same as invincible. An AK can jam if enough mud packs into the receiver, if sand fills the chamber, if a dented magazine stops rounds from feeding correctly. The rifle will fail like any other machine. The difference is how much abuse it tolerates before reaching that point. Many stoppages blamed on the rifle are actually caused by bad magazines, worn springs, or poor ammunition. Swap in a reliable magazine and clean ammo, and the same rifle that seemed cursed suddenly runs fine again. Reliability in the real world is often a system problem, not just a weapon problem.
There's also a cost to that legendary ruggedness. Those loose tolerances that help it run dirty also allow parts to move a little differently from shot to shot. That movement shows up on target as reduced precision, especially at longer distances. The heavy bolt carrier and piston that smash through fouling also create more recoil impulse and vibration. The rifle keeps firing, but it's harder to keep perfectly steady. In chaotic close-range fighting, that trade-off makes sense. In controlled long-range engagements, it becomes a limitation. Stories from soldiers and fighters around the world reveal the truth hiding behind the myth. Yes, there are rifles pulled from storage after decades that still fire. Yes, there are weapons that run after being rained on, dropped in sand, or dragged through snow. But there are also moments when an AK clicks instead of bangs because a spring finally wore out or debris finally won. What makes the rifle remarkable is not that it never fails, but that it fails less often when everything else is going wrong. Maintenance still matters. A lightly oiled, occasionally cleaned AK will outlast and outperform a completely neglected one. The myth of zero upkeep is just that, a myth. The genius of the design is that when maintenance becomes impossible, the rifle doesn't immediately give up. It stretches the margin of survival. It buys time for the user in places where tools, spare parts, and clean workbenches don't exist. Modern rifles often chase accuracy, modularity, and weight savings. They use tighter fits and lighter moving parts to shoot flatter and softer. In clean conditions with trained hands, those rifles can be incredibly precise and efficient, but push them into deep mud, heavy sand, or long periods without proper care, and the balance can shift. The AK was built for the opposite priority, not the clean range, not the perfect stance, the worst day imaginable. That's why the legend refuses to die. It isn't that the AK-47 never jams, it's that when the world around it starts to fall apart, it usually keeps going longer than expected. Its reliability is not about perfection, it's about endurance, a machine designed to function for ordinary people in extraordinary conditions, accepting noise, recoil, and rough edges in exchange for one simple promise. When you pull the trigger under almost any circumstance, it will try very hard to answer. And that, more than any myth, is what made it one of the most influential rifles ever built.